Right now, at this exact second, a completely legal extortion racket is operating in broad daylight on the global stage, and you are the one paying for it? While the mainstream networks were busy celebrating a 14-day ceasefire in the Middle East, broadcasting images of diplomatic handshakes and talking points about peace, an invisible invoice was quietly handed to the global economy. Every single commercial vessel attempting to pass through the Strait of Hormuz is now facing an unofficial, heavily armed tollbooth. The price of admission? A staggering $2 million per ship. This is Prism News, and today we are looking past the headlines to uncover the real cost of a manufactured peace. We are constantly told that ceasefires are diplomatic victories, but let us look at the cold, hard reality on the ground. When a crisis point that handles 20% of the daily global oil supply suddenly reopens under new, unprecedented financial conditions, that is not a return to normal. That is a hostile takeover of a global trade artery. According to data tracked by maritime analysts at Bloomberg, dozens of massive tankers are currently idling, burning through tens of thousands of dollars in fuel a day, simply waiting to see if this $2 million fee is a bluff or a new permanent reality. Think about the sheer scale of that number. A $2 million transit fee is not absorbed by the massive shipping conglomerates. It is not paid by the oil executives sitting in their glass towers. That cost is immediately passed down the supply chain. It is factored into the spot price of crude oil, it bleeds into the cost of diesel, it inflates the transportation budget of every single grocery store chain in America, and ultimately, it lands directly on your credit card the next time you buy groceries or fill up your gas tank. This is the great illusion of modern geopolitical conflicts. The missiles may stop flying for a few days, giving the illusion that the danger has passed. But the true warfare has simply shifted from military strikes to economic strangulation. The powers at play have realized that you do not need to sink a ship to win a war. You just need to hold the ocean hostage and charge rent. And the most terrifying part? The architects of this deal knew exactly what they were doing. Keep watching, because the actual text of this ceasefire agreement contains a trap so obvious, it is a miracle no one in Washington is talking about it. If you want to understand how empires are quietly dismantled, you do not look at the battlefields. You look at the paperwork. Just 48 hours after the ceasefire was announced, a leaked report from the Associated Press revealed a discrepancy that should have sent shockwaves through the global financial markets. But it was buried. The leak showed that there are essentially two different versions of this so-called peace agreement. There is the English version, drafted for the consumption of Western media and the American public. This version speaks of de-escalation, the safe passage of commercial vessels, and a pause in hostilities. It is designed to sound like a diplomatic triumph, a neat and tidy victory to be paraded on the evening news. But then there is the Farsi version, the one circulating internally among the leadership in Tehran. According to the intelligence intercepts analyzed by independent geopolitical researchers, the Farsi text reads less like a ceasefire and more like a declaration of economic sovereignty. It implicitly allows for the continuation of their nuclear enrichment programs under the guise of civil development, and crucially, it frames the opening of the strait not as a concession to the West, but as a sovereign right to manage and tax their territorial waters. This is the translation trap. We have signed a document that means two entirely different things to the two opposing sides. The American public is being told that we forced an adversary to back down. Meanwhile, the adversary is telling its own people that they have successfully forced the global economy to recognize their authority over the world's most critical energy choke point. This is not a misunderstanding. It is a calculated diplomatic maneuver. By accepting this dual reality, Western negotiators have essentially legalized a stealth tax on global commerce. They have given a stamp of approval to a system where a foreign power can dictate the terms of international trade and charge a $2 million premium for the privilege of not being attacked. And this brings us to the most humiliating concession of all, a clause that completely redefines the concept of freedom of navigation and puts the United States Navy in an incredibly compromised position. The cornerstone of international maritime law, the very principle that the United States Navy has spent over 2 centuries defending, is the freedom of navigation. The idea that international waters belong to no one and that global trade should flow unimpeded, but this new 14-day arrangement completely shatters that doctrine. If you read the fine print of the operational agreements, the opening of the Strait of Hormuz comes with a massive caveat. The vessels are allowed to pass, yes, but under the strict condition that they are escorted by the regional military forces that control the strait. Let that sink in. This is not freedom. This is forced compliance. It is the geopolitical equivalent of a mob boss telling a local business owner that they are free to keep their store open as long as they pay for the mob's protection. From a tactical standpoint, this is a brilliant and insidious move. By insisting on providing these military escorts, the adversary is establishing a precedent of absolute control. They are demonstrating to every nation on Earth, from China to Europe, that the United States can no longer guarantee the safety of global shipping lanes. Imagine the psychological impact of this. You have American naval destroyers sitting just over the horizon, fully armed, representing the most powerful military force in human history. Yet, they are relegated to being mere spectators. They must stand by and watch as commercial tankers, carrying the lifeblood of the Western economy, are corralled and chaperoned by the very forces we were just exchanging fire with a week ago. This is not a de-escalation. It is a transfer of power. It is a public demonstration that the unipolar world order, where America dictates the rules of the ocean, is officially over. But if you think the political humiliation is bad, wait until you see how the financial sector is reacting. Because while politicians might believe their own press releases, the people who actually manage the world's money do not deal in illusions. They deal in risk. And right now, the risk assessors are screaming that this piece is a lie. If you really want to know the truth about a geopolitical crisis, ignore the politicians and follow the actuaries. Deep in the heart of London, behind the closed doors of the Lloyd's of London insurance syndicates, the real verdict on this 14-day ceasefire has already been delivered. And the verdict is devastating. When a politician says a waterway is safe, it costs them nothing. When an insurance underwriter says a waterway is safe, they are putting billions of dollars on the line. And right now, the maritime insurance cartels are refusing to lower their premiums. Despite the diplomatic victory laps in Washington, the war risk premiums for vessels entering the Persian Gulf remain completely elevated, sitting anywhere between 1% to 3% of the total value of the ship and its cargo. Let us break down what that actually means. A fully loaded supertanker can easily carry oil worth $100 million. A 3% insurance premium means an extra $3 million in costs just to insure the cargo for a single voyage. Add that to the $2 million physical toll fee we discussed earlier, and you are looking at $5 million of pure, unadulterated geopolitical friction added to a single shipment. The insurance companies know something that the mainstream media is refusing to admit. They know that a piece of paper does not disarm underwater mines. They know that a temporary pause in airstrikes does not remove the threat of drone swarms or fast attack crafts. They are pricing in the reality that this entire situation is a powder keg, and the fuse has only been temporarily lengthened, not extinguished. This brings up a critical question for you, the viewer. Who do you think really controls the rate of inflation in your country? Is it the central bank tweaking interest rates by 0.25%? Or is it a group of risk assessors in London deciding that the world is too dangerous, thereby slapping a massive tax on every drop of energy that fuels the global supply chain? The answer is becoming increasingly obvious. But the real tragedy is not just economic. It is what this constant state of manufactured crisis is doing to our minds. Here at Prism News, we spend a lot of time analyzing macroeconomic data and military movements. But the most profound insight into this crisis did not come from a Reuters terminal or a Wall Street Journal op-ed. It came from a viewer. Amidst all the complex analysis of the Middle East, one of you left a comment that perfectly encapsulates the current human condition. You wrote, "My washing machine just stopped working." Not good. At first glance, it seems absurd. The global energy supply is under threat, the possibility of a major war is looming, and someone is worried about their laundry. But from a psychological standpoint, this is a perfectly rational biological response. It is a phenomenon known as learned helplessness, compounded by severe cognitive fatigue. For years, the public has been bombarded with apocalyptic headlines. We have lived through unprecedented global lockdowns, historic inflation, and constant threats of international conflict. The human brain is not wired to process this level of sustained, high-stakes macroeconomic dread. When faced with massive, systemic threats that we have absolutely zero control over, like a $2 million shipping fee in the Middle East, the brain simply shuts down its macro awareness as a defense mechanism. It forces your attention inward, shrinking your world down to the things you can actually touch and control: a broken washing machine, a leaking faucet, an argument with a spouse over grocery bills. This is what we call the charade syndrome. The elite power structures understand this psychology perfectly. They know that if they keep the geopolitical theater complex enough, frightening enough, and contradictory enough, the general public will eventually tune out. They want you exhausted. They want you hyper-focused on your immediate, day-to-day survival. Because a population that is stressed about repairing a household appliance is a population that does not have the energy to question why their government just allowed a foreign entity to hijack the global supply chain. This fatigue is a weapon, And as we look at how the military operations are actually playing out on the ground, you will see that the confusion is entirely by design. Let us cut through the diplomatic doublespeak and look at the actual facts on the ground. Within hours of this supposed 14-day ceasefire taking effect, reports started trickling in of isolated drone strikes and aggressive naval maneuvers. When confronted with these clear violations of the agreement, the official response from diplomatic channels was incredibly telling. The excuse given was that lower-level commanders, rogue elements within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, simply had not gotten the memo yet. This is the command chain alibi, and it is one of the oldest and most effective strategies in modern proxy warfare. It is a brilliant application of game theory. By claiming that the central leadership cannot fully control its own decentralized militia networks, a nation-state can maintain a posture of plausible deniability. They can sit at the negotiating table, smile for the cameras, and sign peace treaties, all while their paramilitary assets continue to disrupt global trade and keep the pressure on their adversaries. This strategy serves two vital purposes. First, it keeps the risk premium high. As long as those isolated strikes continue, oil prices remain elevated, which massively benefits the energy exporting nations involved in this conflict. Second, it prevents a total catastrophic war. By keeping the violence below a certain threshold, below the level of a direct, undeniable state-sponsored attack, they give the United States and its allies an excuse not to retaliate with overwhelming force. It is a perfectly balanced equation of chaos. The violence is severe enough to extract maximum financial pain from the West through inflation and supply chain disruptions, but it is precisely calibrated to avoid crossing the red line into a full-scale invasion. Everyone plays their part in this theater. The aggressors play the chaotic wild cards, and the Western powers play the patient diplomats, while the actual cost of this carefully managed conflict is silently passed on to the global middle class. And while the West plays this game, our most crucial allies in the region are watching, and they are preparing for a world without us. If you want to know which way the geopolitical winds are truly blowing, do not listen to the people making the loudest threats. Listen to the silence of the people who have the most to lose. Throughout this entire ordeal, as the United States negotiated this compromised 14-day ceasefire, the silence from key Gulf allies like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates has been absolutely deafening. In the past, these nations would be the first to issue strong statements of solidarity with American policy, but today, they are quiet. Why? Because they are executing a massive strategic recalculation. Prism News analysis indicates that these nations are looking at this ceasefire not as a victory, but as a glaring demonstration of American weakness. They are watching the United States Navy stand down and allow commercial shipping to be taxed by a regional rival. For decades, the foundation of the petrodollar system has been a simple exchange. Gulf nations price their oil in United States dollars, and in return, the United States military guarantees their security and the freedom of the shipping lanes. That contract is currently being shredded in real time. The Gulf states are realizing that the American security umbrella is no longer reliable. This realization is triggering the early stages of the largest, most consequential arms race of the 21st century. These nations are not just going to accept being vulnerable. They are already seeking to diversify their defense partnerships, looking toward China for drone technology and toward Russia for advanced missile defense systems. We are talking about a shift of hundreds of billions of dollars. Wealth that traditionally flowed into the American defense industrial complex is now preparing to flow eastward. This silent pivot is a direct result of the West accepting the terms of this fake peace. We are trading long-term global hegemony for a temporary, two-week illusion of calm. And nowhere is the panic over this miscalculation more evident than inside the walls of the United States Federal Reserve. While military analysts focus on the physical choke points of the Middle East, the real casualty of this geopolitical theater is sitting on a desk in Washington, D.C., inside the Federal Reserve. Jerome Powell and the central bank planners are currently facing an absolute nightmare scenario, one that they have zero tools to fix. For the past 2 years, the Federal Reserve has been fighting a brutal war against domestic inflation, hiking interest rates to levels not seen in decades, attempting to cool down the economy. But here is the brutal truth about monetary policy. You cannot print oil, and you cannot use interest rates to clear a blocked shipping lane. The $2 million transit fees, the skyrocketing maritime insurance premiums, the rerouting of massive cargo ships around the Cape of Good Hope, all of these factors act as a massive, uncontrollable tax on the American economy. This is what economists call supply shock inflation. It is inflation driven not by too much money chasing too few goods, but by the physical cost of simply moving goods from point A to point B becoming prohibitively expensive due to geopolitical extortion. If the Federal Reserve tries to fight this new wave of energy-driven inflation by raising interest rates even higher, they will absolutely crush the American consumer. They will bankrupt small businesses, collapse the commercial real estate market, and trigger a severe recession. But if they cut rates, they risk letting this new wave of global inflation run completely out of control, destroying the purchasing power of the dollar entirely. They are trapped. The Central Bank of the United States has essentially been held hostage by a 14-day ceasefire agreement signed thousands of miles away. The power to dictate the cost of living in America has quietly slipped from the hands of the Federal Reserve and has been handed over to the people controlling the toll booths in the Strait of Hormuz. So, if the middle class is losing, who is actually winning this game? Whenever a crisis of this magnitude occurs, the media focuses on the political winners and losers. But at Prism News, we know that politics is just the marketing department for economics. If you want to know who really won this conflict, you have to follow the money. And the money trail is incredibly clear. First, the obvious losers: the American middle class, the European consumer, and the global taxpayer. You are the ones absorbing the cost of the insurance premiums, the transit fees, and the resulting inflation. You are the ones whose wages are being silently diluted by this geopolitical tax. Now, look at the winners. Number 1, the global energy conglomerates. A state of permanent, simmering tension in the Middle East is incredibly profitable for companies that deal in fossil fuels. The risk premium keeps the price of a barrel of oil artificially inflated, leading to record-breaking quarterly profits, all while they claim they are just victims of global circumstances. Number 2, the intermediary nations. Look at the countries that brokered this deal, like Pakistan. By positioning themselves as the vital middlemen, the only ones who can negotiate between the warring factions, they elevate their diplomatic status and extract massive geopolitical concessions and financial aid packages from both sides. Peace brokering is a highly lucrative industry. Number 3, the Wall Street hedge funds that operate in the shadows. The elite financial institutions that trade on insider information and advanced algorithmic predictions knew this ceasefire was coming, and they knew it would be flawed. They shorted the companies that rely on cheap shipping, went long on defense contractors, and heavily invested in commodities. They do not care if the Strait of Hormuz is open or closed, as long as there is volatility. They harvest billions of dollars from the chaos that destroys the purchasing power of the working class. It is a perfect transfer of wealth, disguised as a foreign policy crisis. So, where does this leave you? We have deconstructed the illusion. We have seen how a 14-day ceasefire is actually a mechanism for economic extortion, how translation traps are used to deceive the public, and how the resulting inflation is designed to drain your wealth while the elites profit from the volatility. The system is functioning exactly as it was designed to. But understanding the game is only the first step. The second step is refusing to be a victim of it. This is the Prism News protocol for surviving the age of geopolitical gaslighting. First, you must completely stop trading on headlines. When the mainstream media announces a historic peace deal, understand that it is likely a cover for a massive shift in economic power. Do not let their manufactured optimism blind you to the underlying risks. Second, you have to recognize the charade syndrome in your own life. When you feel that overwhelming urge to tune out the world, to focus only on the broken washing machine because the macro environment is too toxic, take a step back. Recognize that your cognitive fatigue is precisely what they are banking on. Guard your mental energy fiercely. Do not let the engineered chaos destroy your personal relationships or your focus. Finally, protect your purchasing power. If the United States Navy can no longer guarantee the free flow of cheap goods, and if the Federal Reserve cannot control supply-side inflation, the era of relying on fiat currency to hold its value is over. You must look toward hard assets. Look toward commodities, precious metals, and decentralized digital assets that cannot be printed, sanctioned, or held hostage in a maritime chokepoint. The world is undergoing a massive, painful restructuring. The old rules of the unipolar world no longer apply. But by staying informed, by looking past the political theater, and by understanding the true flow of global capital, you can navigate this crisis. Stay sharp, question everything, and do not let them tell you that a $2 million extortion fee is what peace looks like. This is Prism News. We will see you in the next report.